Hey there everyone, it's Cute Anon here for another video, and today we're going to be talking about how the CIA and the British Crown manufactured the entire 60s counterculture movement and how it's still pervasive in society today. Now, if you think back to the Beatles, they were like the most photographed band in the world at the time after JFK's death. You know, America was in mourning. We just lost a president whose brains had been splattered across the ground in broad daylight in Dallas, where LBJ was actually from, that area, oil magnate, and George H.W. Bush was a CIA agent at the time and in Dallas, yet he claimed later on that he doesn't remember where he was when JFK shot, unlike every other citizen in the country at that time. But I digress, back to my main point. The Beatles, you've heard all the Paul is dead stuff and the backward masking. Go on the internet, you can find out they were well versed in Aleister Crowley. He was on the picture of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They were into Thelema magic and the occult. And, you know, as most normal people today, musicians know, there's no way for you to get that famous. Like, you can get famous, like, think of someone like Greta Van Fleet. They got sort of famous, but they were just probably spending money on ad time to get into movies and stuff, and no one really bid onto it, you know, because it was just like a really crappy version of Led Zeppelin. I mean, that's like the way they're trying to push music on you today, but I prefer that over Cardi B at any moment in my life. If I had to go to hell tomorrow and they said Greta Van Fleet or Cardi B, I'd choose Greta Van Fleet. But the Beatles, being into occult, magic, I mean, just go on the internet and do a search of Paul is dead, or were the Beatles Satanists? And I mean, it's all conspiracy, but if you really get down to it, there's so many coincidences that it becomes mathematically impossible. I mean, if I can be an armchair scientist for 1 second. So you can look into that. You can look into how Jim Morrison's dad was the guy who pretty much pulled the entire PSYOP, which was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. There's even a picture on Wikipedia of Jim Morrison, kind of pudgy-faced, on the ship with his dad, who was an admiral in the Navy. And then a year later, he's joining and starting the Doors, the band, the Doors. And the dude never learned an instrument. He could play the tambourine. What, he dreamt up all those songs high on LSD on a rooftop in Laguna Beach? Give me a break. There's no way. I mean, I know my way around a guitar a tiny bit, like a moron caveman Flintstone. But I have friends who are really good. Excuse me. And it's impossible to think up stuff like that. That's just ridiculous to even make that statement. Like, listen to Moonlight Drive or Crystal Ship by the Doors. Listen to Crystal Ship, but not for too long, because you'll be sucked into the evil. Ha ha ha. No. But anyway, Jim Morrison, his dad, was the guy who started the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and later on the guy who was the Secretary of Defense at the time admitted it in 2003 in his book. I can't remember his name, but just look up the Gulf of Tonkin incident, Jim Morrison, you'll see it all there. You know, me showing screenshots seems like a waste of time, because you can just look it up yourself if you're really interested in it. You know, if Jim Morrison's dad is leading the PSYOP, which was the Vietnam War, which we lost because the CIA just put a puppet government up in Vietnam and the people revolted against it with help of the Soviets. It was the Cold War, which is just basically the whole problem, reaction, solution thing by Hegel, the Hegelian dialectic. Problem, solution, a problem, reaction, solution, you know, and they're just two hands of the same right and left of the world power. So Jim Morrison is leading the anti-war psyop at home. His dad's leading the Vietnam psyop, which there totally wasn't a Gulf Tonkin incident. And then his son's leading the pro-war, or the anti-war. Jim Morrison's leading the anti-war movement in America at the time. You know, at the time, there was tight-laced professors and stuff like this saying, hey, we shouldn't go to war. They seemed respectable at the time. They were like, let's not go into war. And so the people who wanted war, you know, the military-industrial complex, warned to us by Eisenhower on his way out, they wanted war. So they have to have a controlled opposition. Think about it. You don't want the government that wants to go to war does not want a bunch of tight-laced, smart guys like Ben Shapiro, whatever, arguing for peace. Unless it's Israel. Kidding. You don't want these smart guys on TV arguing against war when the military-industrial complex wants to go to war. So what do? They create controlled opposition. They put Jim Morrison and all these people from Laurel Canyon. Look up Laurel Canyon. If you look up Laurel Canyon, your mind will be blown. Because almost every act in America that was famous at the time was there, went through there, was from there, came there. Charlie Manson was there, the Beach Boys, the Byrds, Mamas and the Papas, oh gosh, everyone, Buffalo Springfield, Neil Young, the Beatles would go out there, Sharon Tate, Polanski, PDO, flying, that nasty stuff, you know, all kinds of stuff. And then you can read into that how, like, Polanski was even involved in, like, they were videotaping giant orgies. And, you know, how Epstein, think of Jeffrey Schmepstein and the whole spying on politicians and famous people blackmail situation that was going on in LA at the time. Well, who benefits? Well, if a bunch of straight-laced professors are making anti-war sentiments and they're winning the argument, the military-industrial complex creates a controlled opposition of a bunch of hippie drug addicts who are like, hey man, let's not go to war, man. And then your average American sees those hippies saying, screw the war, man, and they're ruining the youth. All of a sudden, it's like that dialectic. You're instantly, as a conservative at that time, going to want to, well, screw that, let's go to war. I'm not going to agree with these damn hippies. You see, so you create controlled opposition in order to defame your opposition and win the argument because you control both sides of it. I know, stupid, simple arguments, but you can look into it. Look into all this stuff. It looks like the CIA, along with the British invasion of the Crown, musically, basically destroyed the youth by creating this fake drug-addled Aleister Crowley hippie wet dream and foisting it onto the American people and the rest of the world because, you know, people tend to follow American trends. Anyway, that's enough for me. Y'all take it easy. See you next video.